And again, we're still in Matthew chapter 26, now in verse 47. While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd armed with swords and clubs sent from the high priest and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal for them. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him." Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus replied, "Friend, do what you came for." Then men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him. With that, one of Jesus' companions reached for his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. In another gospel, we find out who that was, but in Matthew, it doesn't tell you the name. "Put your sword back into its place," Jesus said to him, "for all who draw the sword will die by the sword." "Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will not at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say that it must happen in this way?" At that time, Jesus said to the crowd, "Am I leading a rebellion that you come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in the temple courts teaching, and you did not arrest me. But this has taken place, that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled." Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. When they deserted him, that's also in the Old Testament. All of the things that happen here are fulfilling all the Old Testament prophecies that we've been talking about over the last 50-some videos. Now we're still in Matthew chapter 26, verse 57. Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the teachers of the law and the elders had assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance, right up to the courtyard of the high priest. He entered and sat down with the guards to see the outcome. The chief priest and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus so they could put him to death. But they did not find any, though many false witnesses came forward. Finally, 2 came forward and declared, "This fellow said, 'I'm able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days.'" Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent. His not answering their charges, the false testimony that was given, was another fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy. The high priest said to him, "I charge you under oath by the living God, tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God." "Yes, it is as you say," Jesus replied. "But I say to all of you, in the future you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He has spoken blasphemy! Why do we need any more witnesses? Look, now you have heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" "He is worthy of death," they answered. Then they spit in his face and struck him with their fists. Others slapped him and said, "Prophesy to us, Christ, who hit you?" And we see in another gospel that he was actually blindfolded, and that's why they were hitting him and saying, "Well, who hit you?" There's a lot more detail to go into. Peter disowns Jesus, which Jesus tells him earlier on in the story that he's going to do. The next part in Matthew is going to talk about him disowning him, Peter disowning Jesus. Next we see Judas hangs himself because he's filled with remorse for the fact that Jesus is now going to die because he betrayed him. The amount of money that Judas betrayed him for, and what that money was used for, fulfill Old Testament prophecy. Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, and he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 silver coins to the chief priests and elders. "I have sinned," he said, "for I have betrayed innocent blood." "What is that to us?" they replied. "That's your responsibility." So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. The chief priests picked up the coins and said, "It is against the law to put this money into the treasury, since it's blood money." So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it is called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. And here's quoting what Jeremiah says. They took the 30 silver coin, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field as the Lord commanded me.